All right, peeps. So this is for people that are getting to part 6. And when you do get to part 6, it'll show you the circuit that you'll be building, and it's not different from the other circuit that you had. But you're going to be measuring electric current. When we say measuring the current, we're measuring the flow through of electrons through that circuit, or flow of the electricity through the circuit. And there's a couple things that you need to know. One, to measure the current in the circuit, there has to be a break in the circuit, or it needs to be an open circuit. And you do that by opening the switch. So the light bulb should not be on. Make sure that the switch is open when you measure current. 2, is when you measure with the multimeter. You guys have been measuring voltage with it. So we had our lead in a very particular spot, and we had our dial turned to 20V. That's good. But when we measure current, there's something different that we need to do. One is we need to turn the dial to measure current. We measure current in amps. Say that with me, amps. It really means amperes, but amps is just a short way of saying the unit for current. But we need to turn this to amps, and on here, oh goodness, there's actually spots on here. There's 2 spots. There's one that will have 200 MA on there. That's milliamps. But we are going to turn our dials to this 10A, where it means 10 amps. Why it says 10 amps, we'll talk about that later. But you need to turn it to this yellow 10 amps to measure current. This is in yellow because it's actually telling you something a little special about this, because you need to pay attention to it. When you are measuring on that 10A, the yellow is there to remind you that down here on these plugs, these need to be set up correctly too, because there's also a yellow 10A written on here. And so it's reminding you to actually switch your red lead. When you measure current, you have to switch that red lead over to the yellow 10A. The black lead always stays in common. You don't switch the black lead. You only switch the red lead. So when I measure current, I switch it over to that yellow 10A on the dial, and that tells me I need to have my lead in the yellow 10A down here. So that's that part. And you need to know that. Make sure that you have other people in your group try it out, and make sure you know that you have to switch that over. But then with your leads on your circuit, what you can do is on your open switch, you can measure across that open switch. And so you'll touch the 2 sides, and when you do that, the light bulb, it should turn on when you are measuring the current. There will be a number that pops up on the screen. That is the number that you write down, and it's in amps. We abbreviate it with a capital A, and so you could write that after it as well, rather than writing out amps or amperes. Either way, and that's fine. But important things when you measure current: switch needs to be open. You need to turn your dial to 10A on your multimeter, switch the lead over to 10A on the multimeter. And then when you read the current, it's across the open switch, and the light bulb should turn on when you are measuring the current. It seems weird, but really what you're doing is you are forcing the current through the multimeter so that it can actually read it. You're completing the circuit with the multimeter. And that's why the light bulb will turn on once you're actually measuring the current. Okay. So little things about that. And but again, make sure that everybody in your group gets their hands on it, uses it. And then I'm going to have the teacher pause this and I'll to start the video up again when people start to get to part 8, because there's a new piece of equipment there. And just kind of last reminders. All right. Thanks for doing this, you guys. You're doing really awesome. Oh, and pause the video. All right. All right, so this part of the video is if you are actually getting to part 8. And so if you're not at part 8 yet, that's okay, just follow along, and once you get there, you'll end up seeing it. So when you get to part 8, you're going to build a circuit that's shown at the last part of the lab. But you have a new piece of equipment that you'll be putting in there, and it's called a potentiometer. Say that with me, potentiometer, potentiometer. And the potentiometer, it looks like this. It's like this dial that goes from 0 to 10, and it's got these 2 wires that are coming out of this thing down here at the bottom. What a potentiometer is and what it does, that is what you're going to figure out in this part of the lab. And so you'll put it into the circuit just like it is. Notice up at the top that it has these little positive and negatives. What it is, it's really telling you which way that this wire should be pointing. It should be following all the way back to the positive side of the battery. The negative arrow should be following all the way back to the negative side of the battery. So make sure that you put it in correctly. Or you could just flip around your battery if you need to. But what you're going to do is put this into the circuit, and you're going to measure voltage across your light bulb when you have this set to different positions. When it's set to 0, when it's set to 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10. And so there are 11 positions. But a couple of reminders when you do this. And when you get to part 8, there will be a data table that's in your book that you need to copy down. That data table, it doesn't have too many rows in it. You need to draw that data table so it has 11 rows in it. You're going to measure the voltage for each position on that potentiometer from 0 to 10. So that's 11 positions. And then with the voltage, you need to remember that when we're coming back to measuring voltage, you have to set up your potentiometer to measure the voltage. So you need to first set it to the correct setting on the dial. And remember, we're using the straight line voltage. We'll talk about that later. But we set it to 20V. Make sure that you turn the dial to 20V. And that's step 1. Step 2 is, now that we're measuring voltage, you do have to measure or switch around this red lead. And a lot of people forget about that part. So make sure that you pull that red lead out of the 10A and put it back in the side that has V. Black is going to stay in common, but the red side goes on to V. And now you should be all set to measure voltage. And then when you are measuring the voltage, you keep the switch closed. The light bulb should be on for the most part. You'll kind of see. But when you put that potentiometer in, you're just going to have it set to those different values and measure the voltage across the light bulb. So when we say across the light bulb, it means on the 2 sides. And you could just place the leads on these 2 ends here, or you could place them on these 2 posts. That is fine, either way. But that's how you're going to be measuring the voltage of across the light bulb. And then once you end up getting all your measurements, you have all 11 rows in that data table completed. Answer the questions at the end of the lab. So that's part 9, A, B, and C. And then I want you to turn in your paper to Mr. Mao. I want to see kind of what you got done, but make sure that everybody in your lab group has a piece of paper, but also make sure that you get through as much as you can, you answer all the questions. And if we get to the end and we're short on time, so be it, then hand in what you got, and we'll wrap up lab the next time we have class. All right, but you guys are doing awesome. Wish I could be in class with you guys, but I'm doing MCA testing, and yeah, think of me. But well, we'll be good. All right, so we'll see you guys here in a little bit. Thanks for doing this lab. You guys are doing awesome. And all right, thanks, Mr. Mao.